Hello, folks. Welcome to Between Awesome and Disaster. This is your host, Will Carey. Thanks for tuning in. As always, I hope you are safe wherever you are in this world, and that if you're inside, I hope you're taking care of those that you know and love, and I hope that if you're outside, that you're wearing a mask, because that is the courteous thing to be doing right now. Give it, despite any misinformation that might be in your head, wearing a mask works, and it shows others around you that you are respectful and it takes this seriously. So, it is important to be doing the courteous thing right now. I'm really excited for today's guest. My guest on the show today is comedian Glenn Wool. Glenn Wool is a comic originally from Canada, but made the bulk of his career performing internationally as well as at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival and in the UK. If you're familiar with this show at all, I am especially interested in travel as well as doing comedy internationally. So when I get to talk to guys like Tom Rhodes or Glenn, I'm very interested in their experiences and how that looked for them, even given the state of the world at this moment, and effectively that stand-up comedy does not exist as an art form really in New York. We're at phase 2 currently, so there are some outdoor shows that are occurring, but the industry as a whole, as we knew it, is not there. Nor do I know if it will be. I am not sure what the future holds for the art form that I've dedicated so many years of my life to, but we'll find out. But getting to talk to someone like Glenn Wool, I actually met him when I first moved to New York City. I went and saw him perform live as part of the New York Comedy Festival at the now closed UCB East, which was in the East Village of Manhattan around 3rd Street. And he had one album out at the time. This is before album number 2. He has several albums out now that you can listen to on Spotify, as well as satellite radio, wherever you get your comedy. And it was the first time I'd kind of seen this is going to be an overly characteristic depiction of his comedy, but a kind of a rock and roll sort of raconteur stand-up comedian. His stuff is long form. He's had some crazy and hilarious life experiences, kind of stories that make you go, oh my God, that's insane. And that's why I love his stuff. And his life is very different right now, and we're going to talk about that in the interview as well. And I was kind of looking for some guidance. So I think there is a lot to enjoy here. If you're a comedy fan, and then also if you're at all interested in the art of stand-up around the world, there's a lot that I'm excited to share with, and there's some incredible stories that happen in this episode. So I hope you guys enjoy this. If you are a fan of Glenn Wool, you can listen. He has several albums out that you can get wherever you get your comedy albums. And if you enjoyed this show, I have over 160 something other episodes that I have available as well. None of them are behind a paywall. You can listen to all of them now for free, and I hope that you do, because I really love the work I've put into creating this show, and maybe you can go back and maybe if you're listening to older episodes, you can tell me if I've gotten any better. I like to think I have. So we'll see. And I would love to hear from you. If you enjoyed this show, you can find me on Twitter at Comic Will Carey, and if you're interested as well, you can find my band Bright Ugly, brightugly.bandcamp.com. And that's about all I've got for plugs right now, because I have no upcoming events for the foreseeable future. So, nor would I feel comfortable promoting them either. But this is a really interesting time to get to talk to one of my favorite comedians. So let's get into it right now. Let's go to my chat with comedian Glenn Wool. Yeah, that's exactly how I feel too, man. Like, I figured out how to continue to do these remotely as sort of some connection to the outside world, as effectively the art form that I did and I have dedicated a good portion of our lives to kind of stopped suddenly. So I'm glad to be able to talk to you, man. How have you been the last few months?
It's been all right. We had a family tragedy. My wife's sister died, and we were my wife is English, and
Hmm.
we were living back in Canada. So her sister passed away, so she had to rush back to England, and that was right when the lockdown was being like it was looming. So I
Right.
had I basically moved in 3 days. I just you know just got a plane ticket and came here. So my head was spinning for the first month. I was just like, where am I? What's going on? You know?
Sure. Yeah.
Uh, yeah. I mean, we've landed in a great situation where her her parents had just moved to France, so we're renting their house off of them. So I mean, as weird as it is for me, yeah, it's very difficult for my wife. She's processing the death of her sister in her parents' house, but now she's the head of the household. You know, it's really she's been absolutely strong and incredible through it all. I like it's in a little village too in the Essex countryside, so it couldn't be more different. Like we were living in Surrey, which is a part of Vancouver, a very very decrepit part of Vancouver. It has to be said. So
Hmm.
just just to go from that to the countryside and you know the world stopped too. Very odd.
Oh yeah, that's like the pitch for like for like a dramatic movie like you would see. Well, my sincerest condolences to your wife, because I imagine processing like grief on top of a lot of times I feel like the four horsemen are gonna like show up any day now.
Well,
Um,
I mean, I think we've got two of them already.
right, right.
And I mean, arguably, all four have been here for a while. But I know what you think. I concur wholeheartedly.
Yeah, but that sounds like if there's any place to be going through what you and your wife would be going through, the a quaint area of England sounds like at least pleasant surroundings. Because as an American from like a very rural part of Maryland, I always have kind of romanticized English countryside compared to the countryside uh, I grew up in. Like I was in the UK a couple of years ago and just had the greatest time taking a train from Liverpool to Edinburgh and just looking at fields with cows in it. I don't know why but that image kind of always resonated with me.
Oh, I know that train ride well. The route into Edinburgh is absolutely incredible, and then you get sort of on the cliff, and there's the ocean, and then the fields on the other side. I know exactly why you would enjoy that. I do too.
Oh yeah, like train travel through international, and this is why I'm particularly interested in talking to you. And when I talked to Tom Rhodes a few years ago, and when I think about like careers in stand up comedy, and outside of like traditional ideas of what show business success looks like, I always looked at dudes like you as somebody who seems to have kind of gotten it figured out. Like being able to perform internationally has always sounded very exciting to me. I don't know if you feel that way or not, but I was like be able to travel around the world and do shows. That sounds amazing.
Yeah, I loved it. Uh, it's a bit different for me now because at sort of an advanced age, me and my wife, my wife's not in an advanced age, by the way, only
Hmm.
me. We had a child, so the little guy, he's about 2.5 now. So I'm kind of winding up the international thing now, but you know, for a 5 year stint, much like my colleague Tom and friend, I didn't even have a house. I had no place that I lived. I just went from festival to festival, and just I get a hotel when I needed. I wasn't crashing on couches. And that,
Right.
if there's any youngsters out there thinking of getting into comedy and trying to go the international route, you can do it, but make sure you're at a level enough that you're not constantly crashing on somebody's couch. Because although they're your friends and they won't say it, nobody wants to let a homeless guy sleep on their couch because they have nowhere to go. You know, so
Sure.
yeah, I would make that your barometer. Because and people will try and force it on you, and you go, oh come on with it, just pony up the dough, and it's so much easier now too. Like I don't even know if I would have come off the road if Airbnb had been as big at the time, but it wasn't. I mean, I was just constantly getting hotels. That starts to eat away at the profits.
Oh yeah, exactly. When you kind of start netting out to just kind of sustain it, I imagine there's some pragmatic questions that start coming up. I love that. I love that story of yours about how you were the source of that particular hotel in London's low reviews that you then were able to benefit from.
Yeah.
That's amazing, dude. I loved that bit.
Oh, thanks, man. I forget about that bit sometimes. Yeah, that was. I mean, that was at the that was the last place I had a place until and then it all went. The 5 year odyssey began. Yeah, it was so specific to the like the reviews. You were it was you start reading them and they're like, oh, it's these loud neighbors and they can't do anything about it. In your head, you're like, well, that could be anybody. And they're like, and they keep in mind this is in London, England. They're like, and then they started watching ice hockey for some reason and cheering loudly. It's like, yeah, that was me.
Oh, dude, it's spectacular, and like that story, like that. This is really resonated. When your comedy really resonated with me. Like I think I mentioned this to you when I reached out to you initially. The first time, I believe I had heard your name before, but like it's one of those things like, oh, you got it, you should go see him live. And I think you were doing a show at the now closed UCB East as part of the New York Comedy Festival. This is probably like maybe 2012 maybe. And I think this is your first album had been out. And the specific memory I have of that show is you had this bit that involved Rocky 3. And then as I was buying your CD afterwards, you were real. I was like, I really like that bit. And you were like talking, it's like, you started talking to me like, oh yeah, do you think that people would get that reference? And I was like, yeah, I think in New York especially, it was like, I was like, oh, I'm talking shop with like a professional comedian. It was very exciting for me.
Oh, it's easy to talk to comics, man. Especially if it's about our act. Oh, you're the friendliest people in the world.
I have found that like talking to comedians are always my favorite times. I've never gone into conversation with a comedian and thought, okay, I should make sure I don't say this. I should make sure I don't. Even if I royally fuck up, there's not a risk of like immediate banishment. I just like, oh, okay, I'll reconfigure that for the rest of my life. Now, what was your next thing you wanted to say? Like that kind of vibe. That's what I've always loved about talking with comics, man.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's easier now too. It's the comedy scene's not as cokey of a place as it was before. There's cocaine and egos don't mix very well. So yeah,
Yeah.
I mean that's what But I mean, I stopped talking to the audience after a while, and then and it took me a good few years to get back. It was after a show in Leicester, and I was just hanging out. I was drinking the drink tickets, just not a show that they'd come to see me specifically, just a club show.
Right.
And I was talking to this like sort of like a family of people, like maybe three sets of friends and stuff. A couple couples and these two brothers, and the two brothers went off somewhere, and the one lady went, they're smoking crack, and I laughed because why would you do that at the comedy club? And
Sure.
they came back, and they smelled like crack. That's where they had gone. And, um, emboldened by his crack use, one of the guys flicked me in the dick with his knuckle. That like
Right.
hit me in the ball like a 12-year-old would do to his, like that whole,
Yeah,
you
like a
see a
tap.
bull, and I just, like, he got me because why would an adult be ready for something like that? Just
Right.
took a full knuckle to the dick by a crackhead, and I just walked away. Like, I just walked, I walked, I walked away from the conversation as it was still going on, just up the stairs and in the green room, and in many ways did not re-emerge from that green room for about 5 to 10 years. I think if that's, yeah, just stay away from them. But
Yeah,
I mean, it all
yeah, that
it,
sort of like breaks down the illusion of like the, because you have complete control over the room while you're on stage crushing, then you get off stage and then you just get flicked in the dick.
yeah. But it's I mean, it's one of those things that I think it's why people heckle in the first place. It's not out of trying to help the show. They obviously don't like you for some reason, and they just want to ruin it for everybody. I
Exactly.
think a lot of conversations that, like, just loud conversations, aren't that they need to have that conversation. They've got no control over the room, so they want to destroy you, you know, in any way they can. I think a lot of that happens on the internet right now, and it has been, especially because comics are they've got nothing to do right now. It's just
Hmm.
they're turning on each other in just vicious, wicked ways, and so, I mean, some of the people deserve it because they don't know when to shut up. Just
Oh my god,
maybe,
exactly.
yeah, maybe the internet's not the place for you to spout your fucking theories. Just keep them in your head. Um, but
Yeah.
I envision a long time away from the internet when this is all said and done. I was about to take a break right before all the sexual assault stuff came out. I
Hmm.
didn't want to like make a loud pronouncement. I'm stepping away. Well, why is he doing that?
Exactly. The optics of that aren't spectacular. I agree with you, man. Like some of the vitriol that happens on the internet comes from like when you don't have to like when you don't have the pressure of the stage and crowd for punchlines, and you're just kind of spewing the thoughts that have been brewing in your head. Like I tried to avoid all of this stuff. I did not, and I don't know how. I imagine you probably the same way. I didn't necessarily start comedy to try to change the world, nor did I start comedy because I felt like I needed to like I want to say it like it is. I just found like I found a thing I was good at and enjoyed, and I wanted to get better at it.
Yeah, yeah. I think once you once once you hold the opinion that you have the power to change the world with a joke, your jokes start to get pretty boring. You
Oh
know,
yeah.
I would say, and it's always been my belief. Just make it funny. If it has an overlying point at the end, that's great. But I hear a lot of points and not a lot of punchlines, and I just tune out. I'm just like, well, yeah, yeah, you're right. I don't know why you've chosen this avenue to speak that truth, but um, you know, you just see people. just saying another just true thing and then waiting because, well, you better clap along to that because if you don't, it means you don't disagree with it. And then it's just, what are these people getting out of that?
I
What is this night about?
I I I know. I've always and I don't want anyone listening to this think I have I don't like political jokes or like stuff about the world, but I agree with you. Like there need to be jokes, and sometimes there just aren't. Uh, I'm curious because I want to trace. I'm curious to kind of trace your path to where you are now. I know you're born originally in Canada. Where did you grow up specifically?
I grew up all over Canada. I was born in Ontario, 2 years there, and then 5 years on the Yukon, of all places, and then 5 years in Saskatchewan, and then the rest in the lower mainland of British Columbia until I was 22. I moved to Europe and started well, I was already a comedian.
Mm-hmm.
In Canada, but I shifted gears. I actually I got in a car accident and I also won $10,000 on a scratch ticket.
Ah,
So
yes,
I
I
pooled
yeah.
yeah, I pooled that money and went to Europe where it turned out to be quite a astute move.
Mm-hmm.
Because at that time, all the Canadian comics, the big thing was you got to get to America. You got to get down there and be seen, and that's where it is. And
Right.
I just didn't feel like that was going to be my route. I knew I wasn't good enough at that point to be seen um, in those terms. I mean, you can get a job because you're good looking or whatever. Um, but if that's the kind of comedy you want to do, then yeah, that's fine. But I just knew there was more stage time in Europe, and it was like especially the UK travel wise, it's just unbelievable. Like I mean, I was doing tours in Canada I drove for 15 hours once to get to a gig.
Oh
Drove that
goodness
straight.
gracious.
I know. And you can't do that in the UK unless you do a lap.
Yeah, exactly. So the Yukon and Saskatchewan, that is that part of Canada. Like they talk about how like 30% of the population is within so many miles of the Canadian American border. I'm guessing obviously the Yukon and Saskatchewan is a little bit further north, a little more
The
remote.
Yukon is north. The Yukon is right beside Alaska. But Saskatchewan, I mean, it is on it has the southern part of Saskatchewan touches the American border. It's above North Dakota. That would be
Right. That's right.
yeah.
I used to
I
work
mean,
for Canada, so I have my memory of the geography is waning somewhat, but a little bit. I'm a little bit
you
familiar.
worked for Canada, like what, like as a spy? What did you do?
I worked at the New York consulate in 2016, so it was a really exciting time to be working in immigration during for Canada during that time. Yeah, that was my job for that was just like one of my day jobs for a little while. Filling out stamping passports and filling out paperwork and stuff.
Yeah, my dad. I almost was going to live in Baltimore when I was a little boy. After the Yukon, my dad was in the RCMP.
Mm-hmm.
He charged a guy that a bunch of other cops had investments with, and they were like, you don't need to charge him. He's a pretty good guy." And my dad was like, "No, he's not. He's breaking the law and, by proxy. So are you." And he got him charged and found guilty, but because he sort of went against the direct order, they were trying to they couldn't fire him because he was right, but they gave him a few options. One was to be the ceremonial police officer in the Canadian consulate in Baltimore,
Mm-hmm.
and the other one was we were going to have to live in Lebanon. I
Oh,
found that out.
Yep, I'm
Uh,
familiar with a few people that were given given the choice of Lebanon. I think Colombia was another choice. I saw a few other people take. But wow,
yeah.
so your dad was RCMP, so he wasn't like wearing the bright red coat. Was he?
Oh no, nobody does. I have a humorous story about that if you'd like to hear it. It's a bit long,
Oh,
but
absolutely. I
why
got time.
not?
We have nothing but
Um,
time, Glenn.
yeah, this is back in the '60s when he had just signed up, and he was stationed in Banff City in the Banff National Park. You know, it's sort of just a
Mhm.
tourist destination, but you need a police officer, and they only wear that red coat one day of the year for it's called the musical ride, and all the police officers ride around on these horses and the
Yeah.
tourists come take pictures of it. So my dad's running late to get to this, so he goes back to the detachment, changes out of his regular police wear into the red serge, and he's rushing out the door, and the dispatcher stops him and says, George, there is a bear in the pantry of the Banff National Hotel. And the protocol with that is you have to get a park ranger to shoot the bear with a tranquilizer dart. But if you're going to discharge a firearm within city limits, you need a police officer present. So they said,
Right.
just go down, witness this, and then go off to the musical ride. And he's like, all right. So he goes by, and there's already a gaggle of tourists that know something's up, but they won't tell them.
Mhm.
So they're all lingering around the lobby, seeing, they're seeing the park ranger come in and all the hubbub. And then my dad comes in on the red surge, and they're all like, see, like they're all American tourists. And they're like, I told you that's how they dress. There's one right there. So he walks down, and you can only get to the pantry through the lobby. He
Uh-huh.
walks down, and the park ranger is there with the rifle in his hand. He says, George, do you witness this? He says, yes, I do. Shoots the bear. The bear passes out. And they get four bellhops down, the guys with the little hats,
Yeah.
the little circle hats. And they each grab a leg of the bear. So they're walking out the door carrying this bear, and my dad's walking behind him, and the park ranger's behind him, and all these tourists are just in a stunned silence as this strange tableau walks by, and the park ranger points at my dad and looks at the crowd and says, "One punch."
Oh, that's incredible. I love everything about that. That just made that made that group of people's entire day. It was just like everything I've heard about the Great White North is true.
Yeah, well, and this is the thing. I mean, if you let my dad tell that story,
Uh-huh.
it could take a year. It's his, it's his favorite story, and it's almost it's got a bit of a Canadian folklore about it. Like I've heard people go, "Oh, you gotta tell the story," or people have heard the story. But what I'd love, and maybe the magic of podcast can do this. Somebody has a picture of it, because they're all
Right.
tourists. They'd all have cameras. At some point, will this picture surface and go, there it is?
Oh
You
my god.
know?
Oh my god. Yeah. I got to put a call out to anybody listening to this. If you have that picture, get it either me or Glenn on Twitter. Have my info for you. That's amazing, man. And that also the story about your dad. How about you almost ended up living in Baltimore, which I'm very familiar with. That's kind of crazy to me. Your dad like did the right thing, and because he messed with some other cops, I guess connection. I don't need to ask too many details of the story. Because he did the right thing, he was ousted
Yeah.
from
Well,
law enforcement in Canada. So I think that just shattered a lot of people's move to Canada fantasy.
Well, uh, yeah, there's still, don't get me wrong, there's still some really, really good people in the RCMP. But like, as my dad will tell you, there's a lot of bad that goes on there too. And they, the RCMP, I know is like, because every time somebody writes a book about the RCMP, my dad's name comes up and goes, see, this is why it's not what it once was, because good men and women like this are ousted. But what
Yeah.
he didn't really like being a police officer that much. He retired because it happened after he had 21 years. He retired and went to law school. And
Oh
my
wow.
lord, is he a fantastic defense lawyer because he knows when cops screw up.
Uh-huh.
And to this day, we're trying to get him to retire because he's getting on. But he lives up in the middle of British Columbia, and he represents a lot of First Nations people, Indigenous people that
Mm-hmm.
don't really have access to lawyers or good ones. And yeah, he's sort of taken that cause up and is helping is I think he does it part, yeah, mostly to help them, but he also knows that we can't say, "Oh, just retire." He's like, I'm fighting the world here." All right, you can keep being a lawyer if you want.
Yeah. Well, good
Yeah.
on your dad. Sounds like incredibly important work. So you start comedy in Vancouver, and then you move to to the UK. And where were you living in the UK?
I initially moved to Birmingham, of all places. I moved over. I was with a young Scottish lady who had just graduated from university as an engineer, and
Mm-hmm.
she got a job at the firm in Birmingham, and it turned out to be a wonderful place to to because you're coming in cold, but Birmingham is the actual the literal center of England physically. So
Yeah.
anytime somebody drop out of a gig, I would get a lot of like frantic calls like, can you get to Nottingham in 20 minutes, or so.
Uh-huh.
Oh, it turned out to be good. And that's, if anybody is thinking of making the move when the circuit starts up, I suggest going to, a lot of people go straight to London with the high rents, and the gigs don't pay as much, and
Mm-hmm.
they're a lot of the time they're hobbyists in
Yeah,
the
that was kind
center of
of
London.
yeah, that was kind of my experience of London. I found it hard. Um, I found it hard to even get on an open mic when I was in London, unless I had gotten a spot like 3 months in advance. I thought like stage time in New York can be difficult. And I was like, oh my god, three
Yeah,
3 months
London.
for you to pay
So
not pay me.
yeah, well, that's the other thing too. The London gigs don't give you hotels, and the other clubs
Hmm.
do. You know.
Yeah, exactly. So you were in Birmingham, and you were kind of able to kind of traverse all of these other hubs in the UK early on. And how far into comedy are you at this point?
4 years in,
Mm-hmm.
but uh, I had an advantage over the other acts too, because of the kind of gigs that I was doing in Canada. Like, there was a rough circuit um, in the old days in BC, at least, because there was a thing called the cabaret license, and
Mm-hmm.
if your establishment had it, you had to have live entertainment at least once a month, and if you did, then your establishment was allowed to stay open 1 hour later than the other establishments at all times, just as long as you. And comedy was the cheapest form of live entertainment that you could get.
Yeah.
So you had a bunch of these venues just satisfying their license requirements. Like, they used to hide the stage at these gigs, and they put plants on it and make it so you couldn't tell. And then like at 8 o'clock on a Tuesday, the bar manager would run up, turn the light on, like the spotlight, unfurl the drape, and go, "Ladies and gentlemen, Glenn Wolf," and everybody would be like, "Ah, fuck, it's coming! Ah, I did it again."
I've been on that show in America too. Just like the oh no.
Yeah, and I mean, if you can make them laugh, then like it's just such a you know every
Hmm.
gig was a dream by the time I got to England because it was like they generally the gigs. The reason British comedy got so strong is the grassroots of it was that the pubs generally have a function room. And
Hmm.
that's where they were putting the comedy on in. So it was doable. You could play that room. You didn't have to be bombastic and um, a combat warrior. But if you, you know, if you were able to do that, everything's a skill. Um, so it was actually quite a good way into England because nothing ever scared me there.
Exactly. You've already been through like the worst of it, so you can you'd be like, oh, this is easy compared to what I'm used to. I
Exactly.
remember when I started in Baltimore, I would do this open mic every Sunday, and if the Ravens were playing, that was an uphill battle. And I was doing like very like I imagine like because when I think of like your style, like you're like a long form kind of dude, like and you tell great stories. But I always feel like you kind of have that sort of like ragged like jean jacket rock and roll energy to you, where you could like roll in anywhere, and even make a rough crowd like force them to pay attention to you. So I imagine going
Oh
to
yeah.
UK was yeah, I could imagine. I kind of I can kind of see that transition. I wanted to ask you kind of some other. I'm generally curious about the the comedy scene, or I guess the show business aspect of the UK, because it seems my idea is that it's you can that there because there are all of these like panel shows, that there are a lot more opportunities for comics to get like TV credits early on. It seems. I don't know if that's true or not.
Yeah, it is, and for all of its flaws, the Edinburgh Festival is a good place because anybody can roll up and anybody can have a show. It's expensive, but it has gotten better in the past with the advent of the free fringe, and there's definitely a cheaper way to do it now. And
Mm-hmm.
um, there's not any sort of open gate like that in Canada or America. Like you have to have management before you even sort of get a sniff of a chance at the bigger things, and that's not true. Like when I started going to the Edinburgh Festival, I I had been on the BBC 3 times
Mm-hmm.
and really knocked it out of the park on my one stand up in the big show that mattered. And
Yeah,
I
yeah.
still didn't have I couldn't get management. Like it wasn't seen as like if that had happened in North America, I would have been I already would have had management, but
Right.
I did have a difficult time um, get seizing on any of these opportunities because a lot of them happened when like I didn't know what was going on. I was just you know I was just sort of playing fast and loose and
Sure.
um, yeah. Then you look back at stuff in your career. I wish I would have. Uh, I would really like some of those opportunities right now.
Sure.
Like, as opposed to a very sort of perpetually intoxicated idiot in many in many respects. You're looking
Mm-hmm.
back at your younger self and you're just like, oh, what a fucking tool. And
Sure.
yeah, why does he get all of the good stuff? I'm just sitting there. But again, you know, you make your own luck, and it's weird. I think with television too is everybody's so focused on it right now, but it's really, I think it's about 3 years away from being obsolete. You know, nobody watches it. You want to, you're fighting for the 60-year-old audience, you know? Like,
Yeah.
that's not,
And something
they're
I've
not going to come to shows.
Yeah, exactly. If that's your if your idea is TV show to have bigger shows, exactly. You're appealing to an audience that doesn't go out very often. The other thing I think about is when I think about especially like big mainstream TV and the level. I don't want to criticize and say that network TV writing is broad based or appeals to like or is has like broad general appeal. But when I think about who's like watching TV, like someone who's just worked like a 8 to 10 hour shift for not enough money, um, and then like they're not going to pay it like something like The Sopranos. You can appreciate later, but you got to be able to pay attention to it compared to something like The Big Bang Theory.
Yeah, yeah, I concur. And I mean, before I've been married twice now, and my first wife
Mm-hmm.
worked in an office environment, and she could not watch The Office. She's like, "Well, why would I want to? They're right. It is like that." You forget, you're like, "Oh yeah, this is somebody's life is being parodied here." You know, because for me, it was always a bit like, oh yeah, well, I bet you that is what an office is like. Yeah, I never
Mm-hmm.
worked in an office, so why would you want to work in an office all day and then go home and watch a show about somebody being in an office?
Exactly. Like my fiance has a very high stress job, so she loves like the kind of reality TV uh, that kind of upsets me that it upsets me for existing, you know.
Yeah,
But you just at sometimes if you for like are like very much engaging all parts of your brain for the better part of a day, you don't want to do that for your entertainment necessarily. Um,
yeah. I find with reality TV, it's best taken. It, if you watch it interactively with your loved one. Well, anything you watch with your loved one, um, but it's not seen as wrong to stop or talk over it. You know, like you're not going to miss anything. There's no great plot points, so it's um, it's more of a a friendly thing. I don't, you know,
yeah,
yeah, I, don't, I
it's
think.
the TV equivalent of having like someone play piano in a restaurant.
I like that.
Yeah.
But I mean, just the last few nights, me and my wife have taken to gin and tonic, popcorn, and like doing the Rock Johnson movies.
Mm-hmm.
And first of all, those movies aren't that bad. Because we like to watch bad movies and heckle them, but
Yeah.
um, yeah, there's one where he's with the big ape, and there's a giant wolf in it.
Oh yes, Rampage. That's based off of like an old arcade game.
Yeah, it's a good, isn't it? Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I
No,
remember
I
playing
didn't
that
even
as
think
a
of
kid.
that. Oh yeah. And then I watched one last night where there's a big building he has to fight, a skyscraper.
I
It's
know
all these
exactly the one
movies.
you're talking about. He's always yeah because he's the Rock. So what would be a good opponent for the Rock? A building or like a giant monster? I don't know what other like he'll probably fight like oh has he been in like a disaster movie yet? I imagine he would probably be in like a geostorm or like where he punches a
Yes,
tornado next.
yeah, he has to fight an earthquake. It's,
Right, he's got to like
it,
grab the earth, put it back together.
it,
Glenn, I
I mean,
think we
they could
just made
also just let him stop taking so many human growth hormones because he's so big now that he has to fight these giant versions of things. It's not most guys could just fight a wolf and you'd be like, hey, that's pretty. You did good there, but he's so much bigger than a wolf nowadays. It would almost
right,
be
right.
seen as abuse. Like PETA would have to get involved. Like, leave the wolf alone, Dwayne.
It turns into a PSA for a pro wolf PSA.
Well, I'd sign up for that. I friggin' love wolves.
Oh yeah,
I'm a big wolf fan.
yeah, Glenn. I think someone's going to listen to this podcast and make a multi-million-dollar franchise off of that idea.
1 second, please. I have to close my window.
Oh, no problem.
Oh, you can probably still hear me, but that is the British summertime coming at you.
That sounds spectacular. I grew to love British summertime when I was in Liverpool in July a couple years ago, and it was always like 65 to 7 degrees and hoodie weather. That's like my ideal temperature. And
I am sorry.
oh,
Go on.
I wanted to ask you. So, how many years did you do Edinburgh?
I believe I've got 20 of them now.
Oh wow. And so was that part of what led into more international gigs? Because I have I've been workshopping the show that I would take to do Free Fringe. I just haven't saved the money yet. So I'm curious how that played into more international stuff for you, or if it even
Yeah,
did.
it does. That's where they go. That's where they book the other festivals out of is Edinburgh. They'll see you there, and you know, and also the just the international gigs that you do on the way to Edinburgh or on the way to Melbourne or New Zealand, which are arguably better money. They take less time, and yeah, I don't know. I enjoyed my time in Australia and New Zealand, but in retrospect, I shouldn't have gone there
Mm-hmm.
because I was stretching myself too thin, and I missed out on a lot of American opportunities because I was trying to make I tried to keep Europe, Australasia, and North America all going at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
All I got is nodules. Not a lot of rest, and you'd think that you'd write a lot, but you don't because you're so tired a lot of the time. I should
Yeah.
have just focused on one area. But
Yeah, I imagine like it would be like a band trying to write their new album while on tour. I imagine, yeah, stretching yourself because you're just kind of
yeah,
you just have enough energy to get to the gig and then do the gig with the set that you have at that time.
yeah. Well, and also you're doing pretty big gigs, so you don't. If you've traveled to be there, you're on bigger, higher pressure gigs where it's difficult. Like especially like if you're going over to do a festival in Australia, there's no you can't work on new stuff because conceivably they want you back the year after. So that's when you bring the new stuff back, and uh, the um, the deal you're tied into, you can't do other people's shows. So your work permit is tied directly to the festival. So even if I wanted to work out other stuff, which I didn't, but if I
Right.
had, I couldn't have done that anyway. So
Oh, that's really interesting. I didn't know that. Something I was curious about. Um, when you're performing in so many different countries, I imagine you're constantly tweaking the set so that it is relatable to that particular crowd. Is is there a is there something that you found yourself doing that would be able so that you can make the current act complete always relevant no matter where you went, or did you tweak it everywhere you went internationally?
just tell dirty jokes. Everybody gets
Right.
those.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
And if you're gonna if you're gonna do politics, stay out of politicians because they change so often, and unless it's a really famous one.
Yeah.
I'd do world events. The banking crisis, I had a pretty good bit on that.
Mm-hmm.
A bit though that I laughed. It got me fired from a club. I couldn't believe it. Like because in at the end of it, the big crescendo was about how we didn't punish the bankers, and if you wanted to know how we should have punished the bankers, just pretend that people who looked like me had done that. That was a big, you know,
Exactly.
yeah, just saying basically there would have been another Holocaust if like poor people had caused the banking crash. It would have been
Yeah.
tricked onto trains under the promise of an AC/DC concert. You know? And yeah, somebody found that to be anti-Semitic.
I don't see that, but that is an incredible point. Like, you know how I watch and listen to a lot of true crime stuff, and like one of the strategies of defense attorneys is, you put the defendant in a nice suit and glasses because you want to give a certain appearance. If white collar criminals had to like dress as like, I don't know, street punks or oi punks, 100% conviction rate.
Well, and they wouldn't get their own special prison either. You
Yeah,
know,
exactly. That's
that's the other
Yeah, go to
thing
tennis
about
camp with walls.
it. Yeah, yeah. Came out with an old prison injury. He's got tennis elbow.
Oh my god. Is there a country you haven't performed in yet that you want to?
I've always wanted to go down to South and Central America, and apparently there is a small burgeoning scene of English-speaking comedy. I toyed with learning how to speak Spanish, in my younger years, but I I just know I'll never do that now. That's one of the great levelers of this lockdown. Is I've had 3 months and I don't speak Spanish. So I obviously, like, I've got no excuse of why that couldn't have happened. We've had nothing but time. So.
I know my plans to teach myself Japanese haven't started yet either. But I will say I do know a lot of the comedians in Santiago, Chile. I became very good friends with them when I was there a few years ago. So when we are able to travel again, if you are heading towards South America, I could point you in the direction of some cool people.
Oh, wonderful! Did you happen to meet Corey Gonzalez Mercure down there?
I don't think I
He's
did.
he's
No.
so nice. He's a Kiwi comedian, but I hope I'm getting this right. I believe he's half Chilean, half New Zealand. A very very good friend of mine. I don't see him enough, but yeah, I just wanted to,
Oh,
because I
that's
know
awesome.
he sort of splits time. He's in the movie version of What We Do in the Shadows.
Oh, cool. I love the TV show. I need to watch the movie next. That's awesome. So he splits time between New Zealand and Chile.
Yeah, yeah. That's the one thing. The one reason I would suggest the Edinburgh Festival over it's not the work. The work is nice. The work that can come from it is nice, and from being made to be so prolific, it means I've got a lot of albums out, and
Yeah.
they get played on satellite radio, which at this time has literally saved my bacon. But it's the friendships that you make while you're there, and so Reese Darby, he was the best man at my wedding, um, and that was all from that, and the Concords and all those guys.
Mm-hmm.
It's just we'd all be standing. I can envision the road we'd all be standing on, just handing out flyers, trying to get anybody to come to our shows. All
Right.
standing in a row like that. And I kind of get a kick when I walk past the youngsters now, and I won't say it to them because they probably have some sort of clue, but I'm just like, some of you are going to grow into these wonderful, um, huge comedians, and this right here, you'll always look back at the laughs you're having here. This is your stand by me moment.
Oh
You're
yeah,
all just here.
totally. This
Yeah,
is best summer. This is the summer camp that uh it's comedy. It's like comedy summer camp. I know it. The memories you make are again as valuable, if not more so, than the professional opportunities. Absolutely.
yeah,
Um, is
yeah,
there any uh, did you is there any continent you haven't performed on yet? The reason I ask is because when I talked to Tom Rhodes, we set up if we ever get a gig on an Antarctic research base, that we would go down. He'd let me open, so I want to get you in on this also because my goal is to do
yeah,
all seven continents someday.
yeah. Well, my grandfather, he was Estonian and a
Mm-hmm.
sailor. He, I never heard him make such a claim, but I've had it corroborated by my brother and my departed uncle. He claimed to have gotten in a bar fight on every continent. So I don't know if that included Antarctica, but I would love to hear that story one day. But sadly, he's gone too.
Oh, that sounds. I've been watching lots of How I Met Your Mother. That sounds legendary. I and so, that sounds spectacular, man. I also wanted to ask you. You saying that satellite radio is keeping you afloat right now. And you said you're planning to tone down the international stuff based on your home life. Is there something in your career that you haven't made yet that you want to do? That you want to do?
Yeah, I want to. I've got a book I want to write, and it's I've procrastinated so much that I've actually got the whole thing framed in my head. I really don't have an excuse.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I start. It's not. My wife reckons I should write a book about all my road stories just to start because I do have a few of those.
I'd read. I would want to read that.
You would. You would. Yeah. Yeah. Um, and my wife, I don't think she should read it.
Right.
she,
Right.
she only knows the ones I told her.
Exactly. Have you had that moment where you've had to reckon with some of your old material with your in your current relationship? It's something I've had to do a lot over the last few years.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I had when me and my wife got together, the new show I'd written for Edinburgh was all about being single and older, and it
Mm-hmm.
just wasn't true. And she'd come to the show, and I'm like up there going, I'm trying to just. I got Tinder now. She's like, he doesn't have Tinder anymore. He's lying second.
Right.
But
Well, I
uh,
remember the Pukal Pop story, which is another legend, one of my favorite stories from when I saw you in New York. I think it took a couple of albums to get recorded, but I really always liked that story too.
yeah, yeah. It's funny that one. That doesn't get played on the radio much anymore because the whole
The culture is
the
kind of
whole
shifting.
idea. Yeah, yeah. But and I mean I don't distance myself from it. It's obvious that it's a joke, and that's not.
Yeah.
Um, but I had a guy, a young comic, tell me he thought it was an important joke from when he heard it. Um, he he said that he took it like he didn't even think that was a problem until I said, that is a problem. Like, uh, so yeah, it was an educational tool.
Absolutely. So your comedy has affected positive change in the world, Glenn. I mean, it affected me personally because uh, not only that show was in that show and your a lot of your stuff is important to me learning how to do like long form stuff because I was very much like set up punchline for when I started. So hearing like a raconteur like yourself was very inspirational, man.
Ah, cool. Well, the trick is, and again, this is for all the youngsters at home, don't start with a long story. Make sure you get them on your side with some short, poppy ones first, and then you can
Hmm.
start rolling longer because they trust you.
Exactly. You build that if they like you and like, okay, he's funny. I'll see where this is going.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah.
Uh,
That's a mistake I see a lot of comedians make at the start. They don't think the set list matters at all. Like it doesn't matter. But there's jokes that you can tell at the start that they don't work as well um, anywhere else, and there's middle and there's end bits, and you better figure out which ones are which because it does affect me.
exactly. That's why I always thought like excuse me, the big impactful like jaw dropping story that's the closer. That used to always be the closer of sets I watched. Like George Carlin's like The Planet Is Fine. That doesn't have a lot of laughs, but then when it ends, it's like whoa.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, there's a few different theories about it. I know Stanhope, his was open with 20 new, something familiar in the middle, and close with 20 new. It's like that's not the way I do it, Doug.
Yeah, I
uh,
was talking to Sean Donnelly. I don't know if you know him. He's a very funny New York comedian. The way he does it, he kind of like does like you have 20 minutes up top that crush really well. You do like 15 in the middle that you're working on. Killer stuff during the check spot, and then you close really big as well.
yeah, yeah. I think, and America's the only place that has the check spot. Um,
Oh,
I
really?
tend to try and, oh yeah, nobody else does that. There's breaks everywhere else, you know.
That's right. That's right. I was in Istanbul and I saw a headliner do a 2 hour show with a 15-minute intermission. That's right.
Yeah, yeah. It's just such a better way to do it, you know. Because, and you see, like in North America, the waitress comes by, and then there's a discussion about what drinks they want next. You know, like in the middle of the show, just pick what you're drinking. You know, so you can just do a twist in the air with your finger, like one more round. But then, wow, let's see. I think for this one, I'll have a margarita. You know,
Um,
dear Lord.
oh my god, the way they should do that is I've been to like several of those like really fancy movie theaters. You just write down what you want on a piece of paper. They come by and get it so that no talking has to happen during the performance.
Yeah,
That
yeah, yeah, and like, just why? You know, like, can't you? How did you not pre-plan for this? You know, just get all your drinks at once if it's that. Anyway,
basically.
yeah, yeah. So the check drop really only exists in North America. But my theory with that is to try to avoid. I send in something that's not that great anyway. I get so touchy about my jokes. I'm like, God damn it! People are doing their taxes in the middle of a great bit, you know.
Right, right. Yeah, I think I'd probably misquoted Sean just now. He probably did tell me do something. Uh, don't save the good stuff for the very end when they're paying attention. I probably misquoted him because he's. Um, but yeah, this is. I've really enjoyed this conversation, Glenn. I hope this has been a pleasant podcast for you. I have one more thing I want to ask you, just on so I can because I need some life advice. Your son is your son's 2.5.
Yeah.
So I was supposed to get married this year. The pandemic has put that on hold for a while. I'm still going to get legally married, but I wanted to ask you how do you balance like career and comedy with being there for your kid, because it's something that I know is on my horizon, and I don't know how I'm going to do it.
I think you're in a better spot. You've already established yourself. You know, I don't think it'd be tough to you know, it'd be tough to be in a situation where you can't say no to gigs, and have a little one in your life. Um, so I would say nobody's ever nobody's ever made a mistake by putting their family first,
Mm-hmm.
unless it's clearing a minefield. Anything other than that, I just did a tweet I did once. That's what I did. I set that up and did a little I tweeted my joke there. But no, in all seriousness, um, yeah, I mean it's been easy too, and that's been one of the real beauties of this lockdown. I've had the 3 months of just playing with a toddler and going out for country walks with him and really, really watching him grow every day. He's learning something new, and he's putting sentences together. He's actually this has been the best time ever to be 2 years old, I think, because
Mm-hmm.
mommy and daddy are both there and we don't have anything to do. We were like, yeah, let's play Legos. Why not? Nothing else to do.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, if I could give you one piece of advice, is have a child before this started.
I'll tell my past self that. So I appreciate that though, man, because I for the longest time, and I don't know if this is part of the kind of the mythology of the struggling artist, that in that you have to throw away everything that I guess normal, quote unquote, normal people would enjoy if you're going to be in the arts. And that's I'm realized is kind of an unhealthy way to view the world. So I'm trying to rewire certain parts of my brain.
Yeah, I mean that idea of that, I think that's also perpetuated by people making excuses like, oh, yeah, I chose sanity over that lifestyle, and that's why I didn't. Yeah, it might not be why it didn't work out for you. You might just not have been that good, right?
Right.
People want to, yeah, people love a good excuse.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Yeah,
Hmm.
that makes sense. But to talk to you and see, because I think we're friends on Facebook as well. To talk to you and like you've had you have this great career. Your comedy is great, and you have this uh, domestic bliss. Even though the world is upside down right now, it is it inspires me in a different way. Than when I first saw you did, but uh, it's still inspiring, Glenn. Is there anything
Okay.
is there anything I we can plug before we get out here?
Yeah, I got an album coming out very soon. Viva Forever. It's gonna be. I think it'll be out in September. It's an old show. It's about meeting my wife and how that took place, and some other things that happened along the way. It's if you like the other albums, you'll definitely like this one. In all honesty, I think it's been my best show since No Lands Man. Not saying the other shows were bad, but in retrospect, there was a lot of puns in those shows. Um,
Right, right.
uh, but here's the little the taster. It is not as good as the show that I have right now that I have not been able to perform because Edinburgh Festival's been canceled. That's
Yeah.
the show you want to watch out for. Viva Forever got 4.5 stars from Chortle, but I'm telling you, Pregnant Pause is going to get 5. You've heard it here first.
Well, spectacular. I can't wait to listen to it, Glenn. And yeah, I'll and definitely let me I'll definitely listen to that when it comes out. And I want to read that book, man. So I hope that happens eventually.
You got it. You got it. I'll do it just for you. Hold me to it.
I will.
You promise, Glenn.
Yeah, I'll tweet you. I'll tweet you occasionally. I'll be like, "Hey, Glenn, how's the writing going?" He's like, "Oh, it's going great. Well, it's going great."
Yeah, as I'm putting a Lego onto another Lego with my child. Oh, this book's going great.
Well, I would never discount you for putting your family first, man. So, uh, I, I really appreciate you taking time to talk to me, Glenn. Thank you. Thanks
No
for,
problem. I really enjoyed that. Thank you too.
thanks, man. I really appreciate it. Okay, folks, that's our show for today. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you, Glenn, for your time. I really appreciate it, and for your advice, man. I would love to read your book someday. I'm sure there's some people listening to this that would also love to listen to Glenn's to read Glenn's book as well, and then listen to the audiobook. But as you said, I never would blame any artist for putting their family first. It's something I want to make sure I remember for my future. So thank you guys again for listening. That's our show for today. If you enjoyed this and think you know a friend who might want to listen to this podcast as well, we're available wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Stitcher, Spotify. If you want to get a free month of Stitcher Premium when you sign up, you can use the promo code AWESOME. That is at stitcher.com/premium. You can use the promo code AWESOME and get a free month off of your subscription when you sign up. I also want to thank my supporter on Patreon at the awesome producer level, Mary Beth Moody. Thank you so much for your support, especially during this time. I sincerely appreciate it. And if you guys are curious, you can go to patreon.com/awesomedisaster. Check out some of the exclusive things that I'm doing over there. I'm making custom playlists. I'm doing bonus solo episodes about those playlists. Food writing. You can be a sponsor if you want. That's of course dependent on what you're selling. But I just appreciate you guys listening to this, because this is I found this is my maybe the thing that's going to sustain me. If it was sustaining me before, it's sustaining me now, and when this is all over, I will never tire of getting to talk to excellent, cool, creative people. So thank you guys for being here and being a part of this with me. And I will see you next time between Awesome Disaster. Stay safe, everybody, and wear a mask.